First, we're going to look at the tropics. Typhoons in the Philippines, but also we are talking the activity here in the Atlantic really starting to wane down. So here is our tropical activity over the span of the year. And usually our highest activity is between August and September and October, where September the 10th is going to be your peak hurricane season day. Now, we are well off from that now at this point. We're now at November the 18th, so we're only about 12 days away from the end of hurricane season, which is November the 30th. During this time, we usually see the least amount of activity, but also we start to see if any activity does spawn, it's usually in the Caribbean, and that's where we had Tropical Storm Sarah earlier this over the past 5 to 7 days. So this was the path of Sarah. It started just south and east of Jamaica, heading into parts of the Western Caribbean. And then what happened with Sarah? Well, Sarah stalled out just around Central America. So places like Honduras into Belize saw heavy amounts of rainfall, where the northern shore of Honduras saw places picking up a foot of rain. Now, some of that rain, the Hurricane Center was worried could have caused some mudslides, but we are still seeing some lingering rain in parts of the Bay of Campeche, which is the southern parts of the Gulf of Mexico, and that includes parts of Mexico as well. So Mexico is still seeing some rain from Sarah, but the newest update as of 4 a.m. is that Sarah is no longer a system that the Hurricane Center is watching. It is now just remnants. It had sustained winds of 30 miles per hour, but again, the final advisory is out on Sarah. So what will Sarah do? What's going to be done with the remnants of this system? Well, it's going to be picked up by a cold front moving across parts of the southern U.S. So that's why you see some of these spaghetti models pushing it back into the Gulf of Mexico. Now, even though it will get into some of the warmer waters of the Gulf of Mexico, it will not reform. That cold front will just sweep it up and bring increased moisture to places like New Orleans, Gulf Shores, into Mobile, Alabama, and then into Florida as well. So you'll see some increased rainfall if you live in those areas from Sarah, but no reformation of this system is expected at this time. But the reason why we've had such a good amount of tropical systems brewing in the Caribbean so late this year is because the sea surface temperatures are still fairly warm. We're talking anything from about 83 degrees, 81 as you get closer out into the western Atlantic. And even in the Gulf of Mexico, we're still seeing some of those sea surface temperatures in the upper 70s to lower 80s. So very, very hot water. And when it comes to tropical systems, it fuels off of 80-degree plus sea surface temperatures. So we had the right fuel for Sarah. It just really started to interact with that land, and that's why it fizzled out. Remember, a lot of those models tried to bring it into Florida, but of course that was not the case of what happened with Sarah. Because it interacted with the land, lost its steam from the warm waters of the Caribbean, it fizzled out, but still, again, dumping really heavy rainfall in Central America. So what now? What happens in parts of the Atlantic? Well, we're very, very quiet after Sarah moves through, and we're not expecting any tropical activity over the next week. Again, we have less than 2 weeks until we end hurricane season. Doesn't mean that we won't see a system form, but the likelihood of that is super, super low. Okay, it's quiet in the Atlantic, right? But what about other places like out in the Pacific? Well, it's a big story, a different story. I'm going to walk over to our monitor wall, our M wall, so you can see a little bit more of what I'm talking about. We're talking about the Philippines. They've been hit with 4 typhoons in less than 2 weeks. And this is the newest typhoon. This is Typhoon Manon. And as you see, brewing just north and to the west of the Philippines at the moment after it passed through, and it's heading towards Taiwan at this moment. Very, very active, and this is one of the most active seasons that the Philippines has seen in years. Now, we're going to show you a little bit of video that goes along with this. Typhoon Manon is left at least 3 villagers missing, destroyed houses, and knocked out power in entire towns, displaced large numbers of villagers before blowing away from the northern Philippines, worsening the crisis wreaked by 5 previous storms, officials say. Again, this is all according to the Associated Press. Man-yi was one of the strongest of the 6 major storms to hit the northern Philippines in less than a month and had sustained winds of up to 195 kilometers or 125 miles per hour when it slammed into the eastern province of the Philippines again on Saturday night. Disaster response officials say that they were checking if any deaths or 2 villagers were directly related to Man-yi's onslaught in the eastern parts of that province. They said a search was underway for a couple and their child after their shanty was swept away in rampaging rivers in the northern parts of that province. And in the Aurora province, roofs and debris ripped apart buildings with the strong winds that were scattered in the street and hanging from electricity lines, while they saw trees falling and blocking roads. More than 1 million people were affected by the typhoon and 2 previous storms, including 700,000 who fled from their homes and moved to emergency shelters or relatives' homes, according to the official of the civil defense. Now, nearly 8,000 homes were damaged or destroyed, and more than 100 cities and towns were hit by power outages due to toppled electricity posts. The worst hit provinces, officials said, are needing extra help after the fierce winds and rain damaged more houses and cut off electricity and water supplies in the entire province, along with cell phone connections in many areas. Provincial information officers said are all down. The rare number of back-to-back storms and typhoons that lashed this area just 3 weeks, leaving 160 people dead and more than 9 million under some type of damage or infrastructure damage to their farmlands. Again, this can impact their farms as well, which means that the Philippines may have to import more rice, which is a staple food for them. In an emergency meeting as Man-yi approached, the president asked the cabinet and the provincial officers to brace for, quote, the worst case scenario. At least 26 domestic airports and 2 international airports were briefly shut down, and inter-island ferries and cargo services were suspended due to rough seas, stranding thousands of passengers and commuters. Most transport services have resumed, according to the Civil Aviation Authority of the Philippines and the Coast Guard. Now, again, the Philippines has been battered by about 4 typhoons over the past 2 weeks, so something to keep in mind. So all of this to say is that even though it's quiet in the Atlantic at this point, it's really active in parts of the Pacific. Again, we are watching for what is Typhoon Man-yi that is forecast to go closer to Vietnam as we get into the next couple of days. And even if this system fizzles out, parts of northern Vietnam would see some heavier rainfall as this system moves to the south and west. Now, again, that's what we're seeing in the tropics. In the Pacific and the Atlantic, super quiet, so no concerns about that for now. Now, as we get closer to what we have here at home, the next thing I want to talk about is severe weather in the central U.S. They have been hit multiple times this fall, and sometimes we do consider fall to be a secondary severe weather season behind the spring because we get those fall cold fronts if the conditions are right, especially in places like Oklahoma and Texas. You have that really warm air moving ahead of the system, cold air rushing behind that. That cold front provides that lift, so you get clouds and thunderstorms. It's the perfect ingredients to see severe weather. So this is what's going on currently in the central U.S. Let's take these graphics full. Thank you so much. What we're watching out for is this cold front, as you see, progressing through parts of Oklahoma and Texas at the moment, producing showers and thunderstorms. Even as you get back into places like eastern Colorado, we're seeing some mixed precipitation, a little bit of wet snow, and even in western Colorado, wet snow going on as well. But in parts of the central U.S., we are talking very heavy rainfall along what in meteorology terms we call a squall line. This squall line stretching all the way from South Kansas into parts of central Texas. So this purple box, this is a tornado watch. Now, that tornado watch doesn't have much more time to live. When the Weather Service issued this is for 10 a.m. Central Time, which means it'd be 11 a.m. Eastern Time. And as you see, most of the thunderstorms that were within that tornado watch over the past few hours, starting at 5 a.m. our time, so 4 a.m. their time, have moved out of that box. So now what we're looking at are thunderstorms starting to enter eastern Oklahoma, places like Tulsa down into McAllister along I-40. Now, these are my old stomping grounds. I went to the University of Oklahoma out in Norman. So Norman, Oklahoma City, the worst of it is gone at this point. I-35, you're fine. You're just seeing some storms or some light rain starting to build into the area. The strongest storms now out of that, anywhere from Lawton down to Wichita Falls, you're also okay, even though you still have that watch box in place. Not expecting any more tornadic activity to really happen in those places. Elk City, you're seeing just a little bit of light rain at this point. Again, the heaviest storms now moving through Tulsa, down into parts of McAllister, getting up into Kansas, into Independence, Kansas. We're seeing some strong storms as well. Heavy downpours, gusty winds associated with all of this. If you have any friends or you live in Fort Smith out into Fayetteville, you're next in line for these storms to roll through. Again, moving along the I-4 corridor, pretty much due east. I'm going to look and see if we have any storm reports in these areas to see if anything happened while this storm moved through. So we have a few tornado reports from places like Altus down into parts of southwestern Oklahoma, Willow, Carter, Mangum. We're also seeing that as well. So we'll see what these are saying for us. And what it's saying is that down in the city of Duke in Jackson County, Oklahoma, they did see a debris signature observed on the radar. So what does that mean? That means that they saw winds rotating on the radar near Duke at around 3 a.m. As this system rolled through, which is even scarier to think about because these are overnight tornadoes and more people are likely to die when it comes to overnight tornadoes compared to daytime. Just from the simple fact of whether you can see it or not when the sunlight is up or there's no sunlight at all. So that is down in Duke. I'm going to look at the one near Willow, and the one near Willow near in Kiowa County, excuse me, also a debris signature observed on the radar around 3:47 local time. Down near Hollis in Harmon County, we also saw a debris signature. Now, there were a couple other reports around parts of Oklahoma on the northern side of this system. It looks like a tree was down in parts of northwestern Oklahoma. This is Blaine County, and a roof was blown off from a building from thunderstorm wind damage. So remember that things can happen whether it's a tornado or not. There's a difference between straight line winds and tornadic winds. And really what you can see in the difference of the two, especially when it comes to trees and branches, straight line winds push branches and trees in one direction. When you have the tornadic wind, it kind of wraps those trees around. So you have a hodgepodge of trees falling or twisted up in different directions. So right now we are seeing a little bit of damage blown off by that system out in parts of the area in northwestern Oklahoma. And then as you get near Hennessy, Oklahoma, we also had some reports of some higher winds in Kingfisher County. A broadcast meteor report showed that there were 70 to 75 mile per hour winds right around 7 a.m. local time, thunderstorm wind gusts. So again, straight line winds that were reported to be gusting up near 70 to 75 miles per hour. Now, that's what I'm seeing in Oklahoma. Let's take it down to Texas, because Texas is also one of those areas where we are also seeing what happened after this system rolled through. And I'm seeing even some reports of possible hail hail in extreme West Texas, where if you get near parts of I-20 in West Odessa and Ector County, hail size of an inch. Now, to get that severe thunderstorm warning, a lot of them do need to have at least some type of small hail, and then wind gusts up to about 58 miles per hour, or most of the time rounded up to 60. But that's usually what you'll get for a severe thunderstorm. I'm seeing a few wind reports or higher wind reports, and even some reports of some flooding near Lubbock around Highway 27. So let's take that one and see what's going on in Lubbock. In Lubbock County, a car was submerged under the underpass of 19th Street and Interstate 27. And remember when we were talking about flooding here in Hampton Roads? I mean, flooding everywhere. Flooding, it's the worst time to really get in your car, because when that happens and when you have cars submerged, it's hard for first responders to come and rescue you. So whenever you see flooded roadways, please turn around, don't drown. Now here is the severe weather outlook for the rest of Monday. We have two areas of potential slight risk of severe weather, anywhere from Oklahoma City down to Dallas. But again, that threat has started to move out. I would not be surprised if the Storm Prediction Center starts to really chop off parts of this severe weather potential outlook. But there is still one as we get into parts of the Deep South. This is just to the east of Houston, going into Louisiana, extreme southern parts of Arkansas, and then heading closer to places like Baton Rouge and western parts of southern Virginia. As you see, not really including parts of New Orleans, but they're still in a level 1 out of 5 risk. So what does that mean when we get into a slight risk? Well, a slight risk is going to be the potential for some scattered severe weather, with this system producing a history of some tornado signatures. Would not be surprised if especially this yellow area sees a tornado warning or two, but we also seen roofs blown off and some strong winds up to about 70 to 75 miles per hour. So with that system, we could see strong winds as well. And of course, we got that report back out in West Texas of an inch diameter of hail. That goes right along with that slight risk. So taking this graphic full again, I want to show you guys that this is mainly for the southern parts of the U.S., for anywhere from Texas through Mississippi, going into Mobile, and all the way up from Houston through Omaha, Nebraska. Now, during this time of year, where is the area that we usually see the greatest potential for severe weather when it comes to tornadoes? And it's in this bullseye of that orange color. That includes parts of eastern Texas, Louisiana, mid to south Arkansas, parts of Memphis, so western Tennessee, into Mississippi and Alabama. Now, we are also included here in Hampton Roads in that risk for some potential severe weather. Thankfully, we haven't really seen the way of severe storms in terms of high wind gusts or tornadoes or hail, but we have seen some flooding with the coastal storm that we had last week. But this severe weather area for potential tornadoes goes all the way up into parts of the mid-Atlantic, all the way up into the Mid-South, including places like Missouri, Kansas, Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky. So